Welcome to Vet with Pets podcast. I'm Elliot.
And I'm Becky.
And before we forget, we should say thank you to our sponsors, Vets for Pets Hereford. And recognise it's probably been a while since we did the last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's been over a month, probably.
Yes.
I had really bad tonsillitis. No, actually before that...
We had flooding, didn't we?
We had flooding, we had to cancel one.
Yeah.
And then I was driving here and the tyre blew out of my car, so we had to cancel another one. And I kept having tonsillitis. And then it was sort of Christmas and it was all just a bit busy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, here we are again then.
So we've got one on the RCVS, which is the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons today. Now, we made all the notes probably 4 weeks ago, so we're hoping it's all going to come back to us because it is quite complicated, but that's one of the reasons we wanted to do it really, so owners can understand a bit more, and we can understand it.
Yeah, it's just some interesting research that, obviously I didn't do any of the research, Becky did all the research, but about what it is to be a specialist vet compared to someone who could call themselves as a certificate holder or an advanced practitioner, and what that means for patients and clients. And it's something just really complicated, and I think we're going to touch on then vets' responsibilities as well, aren't we? Really?
Yes, and nurses' responsibilities, because those are changing slightly at the moment. And then it came up, which I didn't realise was in the RCVS guidance, was the owner's responsibilities. So we'll go through that as well.
Yeah, and I've also got the laptop open to cross-reference stuff because some of the things I'm not convinced about, so we're going to look some stuff up as we go. But let's catch up what's going on at the moment, shall we? So, what date we say? It's 5th of January 2025.
Yeah, New Year's.
Snow outside. So I was dragging the kids around in the sledges this morning. We don't have any hills, so it's all downhill power. I have to pull them, so I pulled them both at the same time. So we're slightly delayed starting this morning because I didn't want to miss out on doing that.
I had to get the chickens all defrosted.
I'm sure the chickens weren't actually
well, the chickens weren't, they were lovely and warm, but just making sure all their water and everything's all okay. They won't come out of their run today. I've set everything up so they can, but they won't. They'll stay in their run nice and warm.
I've left our chickens shut in, and the ducks are in with them as well, which I'm not very happy about. Because the garden's all covered in snow, and I thought just a bit of sand for the ducks, just to be away now. They don't really have an enclosed run space.
Yeah, the cats haven't wanted to go out. I think Artie went out for about 20 minutes and he's come back in. Arabella's been in for about 13 hours and hasn't even been for a wee yet. So, and that's one of the things we probably should say. I was thinking if we did get called in last night, it would probably be a block cat because when the weather freezes and the ground's hard, they either don't like to go out and they can't dig to go to the toilet. So we quite often do get a spate of urinary blockages in cats.
So we'd call a block cat is generally a cat that can't urinate. So most common in sort of overweight young male cats.
Very a little bit more in black and white cats as well.
Yeah, very rarely in female cats because the urethra, so where the wee comes out, is wider. So
that's why Arabella can hold it for so long.
We've seen a few of those over Christmas time.
So we always advise people to have a litter tray in the house, even if you think your cat never uses it. It's worth having one in the house just for emergencies if they need to.
Yeah, it's like if there's a storm outside or a barking dog outside.
A new dog moves into a garden where they normally wee.
Yeah, exactly.
Or kids.
Yeah. Favourite patients? I've actually thought of one on my drive-in.
I hadn't thought of one, but Alvis was in yesterday, who we've spoken about before, who was in a really horrible road traffic accident. He removed the wire from his jaw and took the last teeth out that had been fractured, and that's nice just to see him back to
so he'd broken his lower jaw and Natasha had wired that back together. Remove the teeth, remove the wire.
And he's just so lovely, so cuddly, and he's been through so much. So he's my favourite this week.
Well, I remember actually, shout out to Natasha for covering the shifts when I was ill with tonsillitis too. It's not very often. I'm not very good at being ill. No. Don't really do being ill. So it's not very often I can't get outside, but
when he says, I tried to walk the dogs and I had to go back to the sofa.
I couldn't even feed the animals in the morning. I had to do them because I just couldn't do it. My favourite patient was probably little Banksy that I saw the other day. So Banksy's little conure, and he's just really cool. Yeah, he's got a really dedicated owner, and he does tricks and stuff.
So showing off.
Yeah, she demonstrated his little spin that he does on command, which is really sweet.
And you can see that on our TikTok if you want to see him.
Yeah, on the Vets Hereford TikTok. Yeah.
We've had quite a nice week, really, haven't we?
It's always a funny bit of time, isn't it, after Christmas and like New Year time. Like yesterday, so Saturday yesterday. Normally Saturdays are quite busy, but it was just very steady, wasn't it?
Yeah, and New Year's Day when we were in, it was quite steady. We had one stitcher. That cat was lovely as well. She's 13, and she had to be pulled off another cat that was 2 or 3 times her size because it had come into her garden and she was attacking it. So the owners had to pull them apart, and she'd come away with a cut on her leg, which Kate stitched up. But yeah, she's a feisty and everything. She's so well behaved when she's here, but to other cats. Yeah. 13, tiny. I think she's like 2-point-something kilos.
Yeah, I saw her yesterday, check her wounds, and she's doing well.
So yeah, that was. But otherwise, it was quite quiet that day. So we got loads of cleaning done and all the little bits. That's the nice thing. You can get all the little jobs done that when rooms are empty.
Yeah. And I was very lucky on Christmas and Boxing Day. I didn't have any call-outs on Christmas, and then Boxing Day just had one in the evening. Which was nice.
So one thing we didn't get cleaned out was like a deep clean was our isolation ward, because we've had a hedgehog in there for weeks now. We've had one that's gone out to Houghton that had a wound, and that took a good 3 weeks I think to heal, and so that's gone for rehab now, but we've still got another one in there that keeps getting on and off lungworm still in his poo, but he's getting there.
Well, it was clear recently he's just stressed, I think, isn't he? So we sort of need to get rid of him as well, I think.
And then we can finally deep clean the isolation.
Well, it's not dirty, is it?
No, it's just we like to do a deep clean. We've got a rotated system where we do it, and so we like to stick to it. And when it goes out of plan, and the thing with the hedgehogs is we can't use sort of smelly cleaners or anything in there with them. We like to sift it all and get it all nice, and you can't do that while the hedgehogs are in there. And moving them causes them stress, so we don't really want to just move them out just to clean and then put them back in.
Okay, should we start talking about responsibilities? Shall I start off actually, as out of hours is one of the things we're going to discuss. If I start off with my out of hours story from literally last night, it was a good one. It's not the first time it's happened as well. So the phone goes, we're just at the kitchen table having a cup of tea, like before bedtime sort of thing. And essentially it was someone calling because they were worried that their dog had an erection and his penis was stuck out. So dogs will have quite remarkable erections. It's quite impressive, but sometimes they get stuck out, and it can be a bit of a panic for people because the dog doesn't know what's going on.
And the dog gets upset sometimes as well.
So I had someone on the phone to me. He said, "It's been stuck out for 20 minutes. I've got a glove on. What should I do? Should I bring him in?" And then literally as he was saying that, went back in.
Oh no! It's the threat of having to.
I know. That's what I said. I was like, "Oh, Dad, all it takes is the threat of me." The dog's worried I'm going to shove his penis back in. He's like, okay, that's it.
Because otherwise you have to talk the owner through trying to, if it's got dry,
put some more sugar on it and stuff to shrink it down. Like dust it in icing sugar.
So mainly it's just stay calm and just wait. Really, it normally will.
Oh yeah, it always goes back in. So that was funny. But yeah, just highlights that out of hours. So we do our own on call, as everybody knows by now, probably. And that's part of it, is advice calls like that, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're not so funny.
And it's not funny for the owner.
It's not funny for the owner.
It will be today.
But
last night they were panicking. And,
exactly. But it'll make a funny story when you're at the pub this week or whatever. Or it's so embarrassing they call the vets because the dog's penis was stuck out.
But it's just nice they've got you on the end of the phone then to reassure.
Yeah, and I saw someone in the middle of the night, not last night, the night before, and they'd commented that initially they'd googled like out of hours vets and could only see like stuff over in Worcester and things quite far away, and then had thought to ring us and just really appreciated that it was someone that they knew on the end of the phone. And then I saw them. Unfortunately it didn't end well the following day then for the patient, but every step that was made was the right decision. And I think they were just really thankful to just have someone to answer the phone firstly, but then even better if it's someone that you know. Yeah,
and you're seeing that person the next day then as well if they're coming in, so you already know everything that's happened.
Exactly.
You know where you are.
Exactly. Yeah,
definitely.
Okay.
So I think we should probably say who the RCVS is first. So the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, and it's our sort of we have to be a member of it as registered veterinary nurses and as vets. So you have to be in it to practice, and the nurses need to be in it and registered and qualified to be able to do what we can do as well, which we'll go through.
It's a governing body, essentially. So they overview a variety of things. I think the main things that affect us probably day to day would be things like keeping track of professional development.
Yes.
So continuous professional development, or CPD, is something that as vets and nurses we have to keep up with, and that's just fulfilling our professional obligation that we know what we're doing. Because otherwise you could be a vet or a nurse and you could qualify many years ago and then be completely out of date with your knowledge and never learn anything new.
So the vets have to do 35 hours a year and the nurses have to do 15 hours a year.
Yeah.
We normally do end up, we probably say this for a bunch of nerds, we all end up doing more. And we do a lot of in-house CPD with each other, don't we, as well? So.
The hardest thing is recording it.
Yeah.
For me,
even though there's
anyway.
an app now, it's on the website, but it's just, remembering to do it.
I think it was last year I had the RCVS on my back because I hadn't recorded anything for 3 years.
Yeah, you've done your certificate.
and so I just had to go back through and record. And I've done like the mental health, first aid training, I did my surgical certificate, I've done all sorts. I've done like an extra 150 hours above what I needed to have done.
But I think a lot of this with the RCVS, it is a lot of paperwork and admin and it's one of the main sides. But then they need that to be able to see that we are actually doing what we say we do.
And I suppose then the flip side of that is that they have an investigation committee, I think it's termed, so that if there is a complaint from a member of the public about a vet's should we say like professional actions or whatever, then it would be the RCVS that goes in front of and they would investigate accordingly. Yeah,
and they hold like a hearing, don't they? And look through it. And they can actually take your sort of license to practice away. So
I think there's it's interesting though, because the RCVS is sort of founded on the Veterinary Surgeons Act. Have you got a note of when that came in? Was it like 1960?
Yeah, I haven't, but it was early, and it basically says that a veterinary surgeon can enter a body cavity, so they can do surgery and enter a body cavity on an animal. Anyone else could not do that. So being qualified and registered with the RCVS as a veterinary surgeon allows you to do that surgery, and also vets can diagnose a problem, which is a bit different to the nurses, which we'll go into later. So the nurses can enter a body cavity and we can't diagnose, but we can do the health check and pass that information on to you to then you make the diagnosis.
Although, as with anything, there's so much sort of room for interpretation in grey areas, and it was 1966. So it's mad, really, that we're in 2025 as a profession, and the law that we're sort of governed by pretty much was 1966. So there is quite a lot of noise within the profession at the moment that ought to be updated.
And it's what is a body cavity is always the question that comes up, which is being pushed at the moment as well. So we can now, we've done it as veterinary nurses, we've contacted the RCVS and we've spoken to people at Vets for Pets. So we can remove a foreign body from, the nurses can, from a foot or say from an ear. But at what point does that foreign body, say a grass seed or a piece of glass or something like that, when does it become a body cavity that you're entering? And one of the things that have been questioned, it's little things like anal glands. So groomers now are not allowed to do anal glands from the inside, so internally inside the rectum, but veterinary nurses can. But there was a point where there was a question, should veterinary nurses be doing that because it's inside a body cavity? So it gets a bit pedantic.
Yeah, it does. But then I think my interpretation would be that a body cavity is generally, the main ones we're thinking about is chest and abdomen, isn't it, really?
And I think that does seem to be the way it's going, really, because nurses can remove a toe, we can amputate a tail, and that wouldn't be classed as a body cavity as such. So there's allowances for us, it's just always not set in stone, so we always have to check. But should I read out the pledge? Because the pledge now as well, there used to be a different one for veterinary nurses, and now it's all the same. So the vets and the nurses, since 2012 they said. So so it'll be. So actually, that's a different one to the pledge that I made when I qualify. So it's, I promise and solemnly declare that I will pursue the work of my profession with integrity and accept my responsibilities to the public, my clients, the profession and the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, and that above all, my constant endeavour will be to ensure the health and welfare of animals committed to my care. So it's basically saying that we should always advocate for the animal first, but have to take into consideration everything else really. And so yeah, that's the same for all of us.
Yeah.
So if we go into the 24-hour emergency care, that is in the Code of Professional Conduct that we need to follow.
Yes, the Code of Professional Conduct is essentially a set of rules really laid out by the RCVS. Yeah, maybe guidance is a better terminology than rules. Yeah, okay.
And so it says that all veterinary surgeons in practice must take steps to provide 24-hour emergency first aid and pain relief to animals according to their skills and the specific situation. So this is the thing I'm up against all the time. You have, if it's stopped that we need to provide first aid and pain relief to animals, but then you've got the extra bit according to our skills, because obviously we do exotics, whereas if it was something that was difficult with an exotic, could another vet say, no, I'm not seeing that because it's an exotic? And
well, I do get that at night time.
It,
it's not uncommon that we'll have things like birds of prey or parrots be the main patients that on a weekend or night time. I have clients that call me at night saying, I've spoken to so-and-so vets and they just told me to ring you.
Yeah, and I think so that all vets need to be able to give 24-hour emergency first aid and pain relief, which it doesn't mean that they have to do masses of complicated things if they don't understand the species, but it is pain relief. But then the question is, and I suppose this is on the owner's side of things, is if you want your exotic patient or horse or cow to get the best treatment and get it at the time and quickly, make sure you're registered with a vet that does do that and know what your vet does, and just be a bit more prepared really.
But at the same time, I think this is one of these things, and we've touched on this in previous podcasts, with changing expectations, because I would suggest that nowadays on-call used to be much more a case of, okay, let's see your dog, oh yeah, it's got a broken leg, we're going to give it some pain relief and we'll deal with it in the morning.
We'll deal with it tomorrow,
Whereas I think nowadays it's much more expected, I think, that you would take the x-rays at that stage.
Yeah, so again, it's knowing what your vet offers. Just ask them, I think. Because I suppose one of the things would be, we get a lot of rabbits with gastric blockages and gut blockages, and you do that at the time, but if it might be someone with not so much experience, they might not be able to do that abdominal surgery, and so then the rabbit would need to have its pain relief and wait until the morning. So again, it's knowing with your species or with what type of animal and choosing a practice that meets your expectations really. Yeah,
it is interesting how, I think everyone has this expectation that things will just be dealt with.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it used to just be a case of it was a genuine emergency.
Yeah.
And unless the animal was dying, you probably just tied it over to the morning or something.
And then one of the things we've discussed quite a few times as well, that euthanasia may be appropriate is within those guidelines. And especially it follows on that we don't need to do any work if we're not going to be paid for it. That is within those guidelines, and it's harsh, but it also, euthanasia is always a valid option. So that's the thing to be aware of as well. And I know there's always a lot of talk on social media that the vet said I've need to put them to sleep, but it is within the guidelines, and it's something that's fair for us to discuss really.
Exactly. And I think it specifically says, doesn't it, veterinary surgeons are not obliged to carry out ongoing treatments for which the owner is unable to pay.
Yeah, so we need to give the first aid treatment.
Which is realistically maybe euthanasia. That's in these situations.
And in some of these, we get animals that have got lots of chronic problems going on. They haven't seen a vet for years. I'm thinking like elderly animals, and they have got severe dental disease. They've got other things, and then maybe they've hurt their leg. But the leg, we could fix the leg easily, but then there's still the cost of all those other things that need to make that animal's
Yeah.
life comfortable.
Its welfare is already very
Yeah.
compromised.
Yeah.
So you've got to look at the whole patient.
And you've just got to make the owner aware, because there's no point also us doing first aid treatment and spending money that evening when the next day we're then going to say, well, did you know actually as well, your dog
Or they're then
needs this,
unable to afford
Yeah.
the follow-on care.
Yeah.
But it's very challenging, because often it's very emotive times.
And it's so sudden as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
so particularly if it's something sudden onset, particularly if it's a patient that was otherwise sort of relatively young and healthy in some circumstances,
Yeah.
they can be very, very challenging conversations to have. Yeah.
And then the other part of it is that the veterinary surgeon should decide and advise whether attention is required immediately or can reasonably be delayed. So it isn't the case that the vet has to come out. It is on the vet to decide, and that can be hard over the phone as well,
So
to try to work out if
Yeah.
it's an emergency or not.
But then at the same time, it's a case of people's opinions will differ on that as well.
Yes.
So I'll certainly have times where I'll have someone on the phone who, it can be either way. They'll either perceive that
Yes.
it is a real emergency and it has to be seen straight away, or they'll perceive that they just thought they were ringing for advice and they think the animal's okay, and I'm saying, no, I think this needs dealing with.
Emergency.
And then sometimes you then don't know until you, either way, you do actually see them. And then it can go
Yes.
either way. You'll have things where I'd taken the call over the phone and thought, oh, this is something or nothing.
Yeah.
And then you meet them here and think, no, actually, this is good that we saw this.
Yeah. Or they come
Or
like
the
running
opposite.
through the door.
More often than not, it's a case of there's something that's perceived to be awful, and then the patient comes like running in through the front door
Yeah.
with their tail wagging. I'm fine now. Often because they've seen me, I think.
Yeah. And
Or they've recognised the environment.
Yeah.
The classic is lame dogs. So dogs that are
Yes.
limping, they'll be like holding the leg up, really upset at home,
Yeah.
and then they get here.
A little bit of adrenaline kicks in.
and they're like almost literally fine.
Yeah.
But again, if it's something that, my general rule of thumb is that if it's something the owner perceives as an emergency, then it should always be enough of an emergency for us to see it,
Yeah.
unless it is really obvious over the phone that it probably will be okay.
Yeah. And I suppose it depends what time they call you as well, because like this morning quite often we'll leave our 10 o'clock appointment free, won't we? So we don't, our 10:30 appointment, so we don't start till 11, so you've always got an appointment at 10:30. So if it's something that's not urgent overnight, you can say to them, I'll meet us at practice at 10:30, and we've always got, so we plan for things like that as well, don't we?
Often on a Sunday anyway, we don't tend to have the weekdays, we
No.
used to, and then,
Yeah. So that, can work out quite well. What have I got next? Yeah, I suppose that was the main thing with that really. That was all the outcomes. I suppose it's the cost again. There is a cost to calling a vet out in the night, and it's that comes into it as well, I suppose. Of do you need to be seen or do you not? And it is going to cost you this much, but you have to let people know. So you will get complaints you see online saying, oh, the first thing the vet said was it's going to be this much, but we understand it is a considerable amount to pay, so we've got to let people know what they're letting themselves in for.
I would generally advise people that there will be the call-out fees, etc., plus other treatment fees. And you'll have people that will then express that they want to discuss that and know how much it is, and you'll have people that understand that they need to be seen.
Yeah, and we'll sort it out when you get here.
Yeah.
So if you move on to maybe the client's responsibility, which
this is interesting. This bit.
It was never brought up, because obviously when you're doing your student nurse training, you do have to learn what the vet can do, what the nurses can do. But this has never come to my attention. So part of the on-call situation, we will get people phoning that aren't clients of our practice and our clients somewhere else. So in the guidance, we don't need to see, we don't have to see clients that aren't our clients, and we will be asking you to ring your own vets. We quite often get it at the weekends.
Certainly at night time. Weekends, it depends. If we've got someone who really wants to register with us at the weekends and we've got space, then that's fine. They register, join the care plan, etc. But night time, pretty much exclusively, I will redirect them to normal practice.
Yeah. So again, it's something to be aware of. Just check what times your vet's open. Are they open in the evenings? Are they open at weekends? Do they do their own on-call, or is their on-call practice further afield, maybe Vets Now or one of the others that do it, and just know what you're offered really, and does that fit your life? If you needed to call someone in the middle of the night, could you drive to where your on-call place is?
Exactly. It's all very well calling me and saying, well, I can't get to Newport or wherever I've been directed to, but then it's a consideration that you should have made before the emergency ever happened.
And we've got to look after our team, so you're the main person on call, and you need to work the next day as well. We need to look after our own.
We still, I suppose actually, one really important thing to note, and I think we noted this before, is that this isn't any poor reflection on practices that don't do their own on-call. No. It's just that it's moving times, and we're still quite old school in that we will have vets, mostly me, on call, but then working normal shifts, so still a normal sort of 40 plus hour week. Whereas that's less and less common to have that.
But that's why we need to just only see our own clients as well, because we know how many clients we've got registered, we know how many patients, and we can base our busyness around that, can't we? Whereas if we were to see everyone that starts phoning, it just becomes unsustainable. And believe it or not, we charge isn't worth getting out in the middle of the night.
No.
And that's another thing we quite often see. They said they'd see us because they want to get the however much it is for that.
I don't want to be. No way.
It's not worth it. And then that is one of the other things as well. So owners are responsible for transporting their animals to the veterinary practice, including an emergency situation. So RCVS encourages owners to think about how they can do this and make plans before an emergency arises. So just sort of what we were talking about really.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the times that does come in is New Year's. We were talking about when people have quite often had some alcohol.
And that's I've had that several times over the years where it proves challenging to coordinate something with an animal that, as far as I'm aware, sounds like it needs to be seen, but who knows if they've had a few drinks.
And then can they actually get to us, etc. So that does fall onto the owner to make sure in advance that you can get to where you're out of hours.
But I suppose a step back from that is there is a note on owners that have no vet, which the most important thing with this is if you have an animal, then register with a veterinary practice, really. It doesn't matter what animal it is, even if it's a hamster, then register with a vet practice, so that you've got somewhere that you know you're entitled to seek their services whatever time of day or night.
And because with us locally, we're not the only practice that will not see anyone that's not their client.
Although it is, if they have no vet, I understand the obligation is that we should provide the first aid and penny relief. And then I think you just enter a discussion from there. So I guess a good example of that would be when people are on holiday, and we do see quite a lot of holiday makers,
and especially
at the
people
weekend.
who are registered with other vets for pets. That's where all the vets for pets. So we're a separate business from other vets for pets. Everyone's got their own, like their own JVP. So they are a separate business, but we are still sort of in it together. And we hope they do the same for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a goodwill thing, isn't it? Really. I'd rather not have one of my clients turned away from another Vets for Pets if they're on holiday and in need, sort of thing.
Then this one was interesting for owners, because we get quite a lot of people that will bring like a stray cat in for treatment and say it's a stray cat, but they've been feeding it for say a year. So it says the law is clear that a person becomes responsible for an animal by virtue of ownership or where they can be said to have assumed responsibility for its day-to-day care.
So
if you're feeding it, it's yours. It's your responsibility. And it says it includes those who assume responsibility for the animal on a temporary basis, so keepers and carers such as owners, friends, neighbours, relatives, boarding. And this is something we see quite often as well. They're looking after it for a friend, but they don't know which vet it's registered with. So if you're taking on the responsibility, which is a nice thing to do for someone when they go on holiday, but just make sure they know what vet they're registered at. And we quite often get owners saying, my friend's looking after them for a week, can you just put a note on to say they're okay to do? And so we've got it if we need it. Just a bit of forward planning is good.
The stray cat situation is always because if you're feeding it, it's yours, essentially. That's the bottom line.
That's it. And it's a really nice thing to do, but
then when it needs something doing, we can't be a charity, unfortunately. We have to pay all our colleagues and pay rent and everything else, and
And we still do take in quite a few.
Oh yeah.
Well,
more than what we should do.
We'll talk about surrounding a bit.
But yeah, I think sometimes people can have expectations that even though they've been feeding it for 3 years, it's not theirs.
Yeah.
Someone else.
And they've normally been buying flea and wormer from off the bin for it, so it's coming every day.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting one.
Yeah.
And then obviously everyone needs to be providing the 5 welfare needs. That's not an RCVS requirement, that is the law, it's the Animal Welfare Act. So,
but it's amazing how many people don't know what the 5 welfare needs are. So that's one of my things I like to do when I do school and nursery visits, is to talk about the 5 welfare needs. Because it's not well taught in our education system.
No. And in the law it's not, and well, this is from speaking to people within the RSPCA as well, it's not well known by police officers, and trying to bring it into court is difficult because again it is quite vague, but from us it's quite black and white, as like providing a suitable environment. To us, a rabbit should not be in just a hutch. If a rabbit's in a hutch, they're failing those animal, the Animal Welfare Act. Suitable diet is another one. Ability, and I think the suitable diet, as far as the RSPCA being able to prosecute, if it's being fed, they find it hard to be able to then bring a prosecution. So even if it wasn't suitable, the ability to exhibit normal behaviour patterns. So again, a rabbit in a hutch, not doing that.
Its own.
It's not, and if it's on its own, well, that's another one. Housed with and apart from other animals. So there's a lot of these that day to day in the UK are just going on all the time.
And so just getting up on the laptop. So 57% of UK households house 38 million pets. So 57% of UK households have a pet.
Yeah.
Whereas I put money on, if you were to go out and ask like the population to name the 5 welfare needs, I don't think 57% of people would be able to name them.
No, I agree. And it hasn't really changed very much over the years. It's been similar for
I think it's, I don't know when
and then the last one, number 5, is protection from pain, suffering, injury and disease, which I think most people would be able to name that one. And it would be expected.
Yeah, I don't know. I find in schools that's when they always struggle to name.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah, 2006 the Animal Welfare Act came in, so it's not exactly a new thing.
But I think these were in it before that,
I think
but in a slightly different way. But yeah, it still doesn't get prosecuted unless it's severe. I think like there was a one on the news this week that someone had 30 cats in cages outside covered in blankets in Wales. And that was the point, that they're able to be removed from the person. And I think the RSPCA aren't perfect, but they get a lot of slack for not prosecuting, but it's not them that actually can prosecute. It has to go through a court, and it has to become an actual case for the police, and they have to work together. And if the police don't understand what these animals need, needs a vet involved there somewhere. Danny Chambers needs to get on the case.
I don't know. I think there is always a vet involved in these sort of things, but I think for me it's more an education piece. It's people understanding what the 5 welfare needs are and what they look like,
and for
different species.
Different species, definitely. Well, we see it a lot with the reptiles, don't we?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, suitable environment. It's and again, it's quite vague.
Yeah.
So but those were those bits. And then from our point of view, it's that veterinary surgeons can help owners, keepers and carers meet their responsibilities, so we need to be providing the right advice. And I think that's where our longer appointments come in here. We tend to have 30-minute appointments where we don't just fix the animal and send it off. We look at the animal as a whole, and there can be lots of things going on, especially if like stress is involved, poor diet, poor husbandry. There's no point just fixing that one little thing.
No, exactly.
So that's where we come in.
Yeah.
But the owner needs to notice it and bring the animal to us first.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so there's no legal requirement for owners to register their animal with veterinary practice, but the RCVS do strongly encourage it, which is what we have said. Really.
Then it's interesting that there's no legal requirement, but then one of the 5 welfare acts is protection from pain, suffering, injury and disease.
Which you can't do without being registered with the vet.
But
and that's I think that is one of the bits that needs to change. I think if you own a pet, you should be registered.
Well, for me, I really hope that at some point there will be a new Veterinary Surgeons Act, and I think there will be more responsibility put onto owners.
Yes.
Because I think at the moment, so just to draw a line under the out of hours bit, but the out of hours situation is essentially the responsibility of the vet.
Yes.
To make sure that it is there for the owner, which is subtly different to it being the responsibility of the owner.
Yes.
To make sure they have access to out of hours.
Which I think in other European countries, I've been told.
It is the case.
Not all practices have to offer an out of hours, where in this country, if you're registered as a veterinary practice, a premises, you, even if it's a mobile one, you have to have some sort of out of hours, and even if it's outsourced.
Yeah, it could be an agreement with somebody else, but you as the vet practice have to have made sure that that's available.
So we are lucky in a way, but it's the owner. So the vets know also the practice can plan, and we know how many people we're catering for, really, is the thing, isn't it? So that's mainly the owner's side of things. So then the registered veterinary nurses. So veterinary nurse isn't a protected title, so anyone can call themselves a veterinary nurse, unfortunately. It's something that
there was a few years ago, there was a lot of stuff going on about making protected titles, but then it just
and it needs
never
RCVS behind it. I don't know what's into it, but that's what it seems. And but it needs to go through law, and obviously there's lots more important things at the moment that need to be sorted, I suppose. But looking that your veterinary nurse is a registered veterinary nurse, you shouldn't call yourself a registered veterinary nurse. And you can't do the things such as what we've said, like amputating toes, putting IV cannulas in, giving IV fluids.
But there's some practices out there that don't have any registered veterinary nurses, and would only have unregistered veterinary nurses.
And we used to call them auxiliary nurses. And there are, so anaesthesia is one of the things, so anyone can monitor an anaesthesia legally. Under RCVS, the guidelines are that they should have relevant experience really in teaching, but that doesn't have to be anything formal. Whereas here it would be our registered veterinary nurses or our student nurses.
Well, we've had some very rare occasions where I can think of one situation where we had three genuine emergencies on the go all at the same time under my direct supervision, and we had then one that was being monitored by someone who was not a nurse.
That was an animal nurse.
So it happens. And
the way that works is that the veterinary surgeon at the moment is sort of supervising, responsible for any anaesthesia. So even though the veterinary nurse is monitoring it, the vet is responsible for that anaesthetic, which is what allows auxiliary nurses or
it's considered like a delegated task, isn't it? So it's responsibility of the vet surgeon that's been delegated then to somebody else.
So again, it's one of those things that ask your practice, are all the veterinary nurses registered veterinary nurses or student veterinary nurses? That's definitely worth knowing. And then knowing what your veterinary nurses do. So we do a lot here. We're doing booster vaccinations now, because that's one of the main things that's changed. The prescribing rules for vets since COVID, because there was remote prescribing allowed, which means the vet could, over the phone, take all the information about your animal and make a prescription. That has sort of carried on since COVID.
Well, I think it's also that it's become slightly more acceptable. Like, I think from a vaccination point of view, it's always been a little bit of a grey area. But if you consider, for example, farm animal work, you would quite happily give a farmer a load of vaccines to administer to their animals. So it has always been something that's been okay for nurses to do, I believe, but it's something that's become more mainstream. And the remote prescribing rules. So for example, I could very feasibly do a video consultation. Someone tells me that their animal is stiff and painful, and we could prescribe some anti-inflammatory pain relief without seeing the animal. That's or I could delegate that task to a registered veterinary nurse.
And that's sort of how we're using it with the boosters, isn't it? So the nurse will do our health check. We have a set way that we do the health check, and you've given us training on that. So we have a set way, and if any of those things are out of the ordinary, we go back and check with the vet. Otherwise, we have a standard vaccination procedure of which vaccines we use where, how long they can go over a vaccine without having it. So everything is set in stone, really. The nurse does the health check, the vet prescribes the vaccine. And we're at the moment we're doing animals under 10, the nurses, because over 10 you're likely to get a few more sort of chronic problems that might benefit from the vet. But from our nurse point of view, we've got, well, I do my nutrition, we've got Kelly with her behaviour, Anna with massage, and we are pretty good with talking about old age things such as arthritis and changing things in the home, and again looking at the holistic side of things, aren't we?
I think in many ways you have probably a more rounded consult with the veterinary nurse compared to the vet.
And with something like a booster.
And
I think sometimes owners are just a bit more relaxed with us, and they'll ask what they think are silly questions that they wouldn't ask you.
I don't know.
Sometimes.
I don't know. I think we've got plenty of questions, but I think for me it's more a case of you guys will be more relaxed in spending more time, whereas I'll be conscious that I need to get on to reporting results or going back into theatre or we've got a hospitalised patient that I need to deal with, or those sort of things.
And we're seeing the first year boosters now, so they've had their puppy vaccines, they've been in for puppy checks with the nurses, so I know the animal really well, and then they're coming back at 16, 18 months old to have their booster, and it's so nice just to see them, and the owner knows you, the dog still recognises you, and that's been really nice. So we're able to do that, and then if we've got a busy Saturday or Sunday and say we get a cat with a sore leg, you're fully booked, we're able to offer an appointment that day with the nurse, we'll do the health check. So rather than doing it over the phone like you were talking about, that they get a physical actual exam, we see them in person, and then the vet will prescribe what we need based on our health check. Is really how it's working. The things we can't do it for, which has changed recently, is parasite control.
Any sort of like anti-parasiticides, antimicrobials.
That are prescription. If you want to get one that questionably may not work off the shelf, you can buy that whenever you want.
But not the antibiotic side of things.
No, not antibiotics.
Not legally.
Antibiotics, the vet needs to have done a health check as well, and then also controlled drugs.
They need to have had an examination.
Yes.
Again, it's a slightly grey area to interpretation. There needs to have been an examination. And the same with the parasite treatments as well.
So basically the practice wouldn't run without a vet. We can't do that. The vet needs to be in the building, needs to be here.
But also with all of these things, the important thing to point out is that even if you've got veterinary nurses doing booster vaccines or whatever, there needs to be a vet available to see that patient then if there were to be an emergency. So say, for example, you were to administer a booster vaccine and the animal goes into like an anaphylaxis type reaction, you need to have access to an emergency vet. Generally, I think it's considered that should be at the same site. I'm not sure that's actually specified.
Well, it does say they need to be within, I'm sure it says within a certain amount of time, and they don't say you have to have a vet on site for nurses giving boosters, but it's advised.
I think it's advised.
Is how it's said. And it makes sense, doesn't it? And plus if we pick up something in the booster vaccination, say something wrong with the eye, or we feel an abdominal mass, otherwise you're making that animal come back on another day. But
even then though, I think that's what we will be doing, is we'll be separating out the booster vaccine from, if there is then an illness, then it'll be rescheduling to see a vet, similar to what's happened at the GP situation really.
But it's nice when we have, if somebody is free, they do, they generally, or at least get advice of how, if it's
I disagree in that it should be a case of, again, it would be rebooked unless it's a genuine emergency.
Which we do sometimes get, because obviously the receptionists are asking on the phone, are they well, are they eating, are you because the nurse will be seeing them, so, and then we'll still get to the appointment and they'll be like, oh, by the way.
But again, most of the time it's something you can deal with anyway. So.
No, definitely. So those are the new sort of prescribing rules really, that we're now having to follow. But it's been a year now. It was last January,
Mhm.
wasn't it? It
Mhm.
came in.
Mhm.
We seem to have it
Yeah, I
under
don't know when
control.
it was, but it was a while ago.
Yeah, and the other thing we should mention actually is just because you are an RVN doesn't mean that you can automatically do all these things. Like you don't qualify and then automatically be able to amputate a toe.
No.
You
You
do,
need to be appropriately trained.
it's not a day one skill.
No.
You do need to have
Yeah.
extra. So, yeah, I wouldn't be confident amputating a toe by myself, but I could do a wound stitcher.
Yeah.
And then all of our nurses can do, different things,
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
they? So, because one of the things we asked was, would we be able to burr rabbits' molars? Was one of the other things we asked
Yes.
RCBS, and they said yes, but just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
So, like, I've seen quite a
Well,
lot.
it was
of
an incredibly
them
waffly answer, wasn't
yes.
it? I mean,
But I suppose it's if the vet feels they're happy to delegate it to you and you have
Yeah.
enough experience, then you can. But
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
mean that every RVN can do everything either. It's what we feel comfortable with, isn't it? And what we're happy doing. So the next thing that was interesting was physio, osteopathic and chiropractic therapy, and this also is canine massage, which a lot of our patients do access. So that is now under the RCBS guidelines, and they're calling it the vet-led team. So what that basically means is the vet, say we said to someone, oh, you should go to see an osteopath or go and see a physio. That physio would then contact us for the history of that patient, and then provide us with updates on their treatment, so that everything is seamlessly all together really, and that we're both informed of what each other is doing. Which is, I think it's a good progress. So that's interesting. If you're seeing anyone of that sort, and I'd probably say hydrotherapy would be in with that as well. So if your animal's seeing anyone, they should be in contact with your vet, and vice versa. Which is a good thing to know, and a good way of checking out really if someone's reputable, I suppose,
Exactly.
offering it. And
exactly.
again, just because it's in here, it might not necessarily be what your vet advises either for your animal.
Yeah, so I was just getting up on Google actually. It's really interesting where some of these things came from. So just looking at the history of chiropractic, right, let me see. So, I've just lost the link now.
Shall I read these out? So they're saying physiotherapy, which covers, I said, physiotherapy, the osteo, all of those. So it should be, again, delegated by the veterinary surgeon who's first examined the animal. So the person providing the treatment has to be over 18. The person is acting under the direction of a qualified person who has examined the animal or prescribed the treatment, so that's basically the vet. And so, it includes all of those things, and the vet should be the one to advise it.
So interesting little fact is that D.D. Palmer founded chiropractic in the 1890s, claiming that he'd received it from the other world, and he maintained that the tenets of chiropractic were passed along to him by a doctor who had died 50 years previously, which I think is just amazing how some of these things are so acceptable in day-to-day society as such, but actually the origins of some of these things are mad.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of going to a chiropractor came from a guy who thought he'd been told by a ghost quite a long time ago.
It's more scientific now.
Mad. Yeah. But it is interesting.
And the last thing before we go on to like the specialisms, which is the most complicated bit, we'll try and make it more interesting, is lay people. So lay people, like we've said, is someone who isn't a vet and isn't a veterinary nurse or a student nurse or a vet student vet as well. These sort of things shouldn't be delegated, such as an IV cannula, putting a urinary catheter in. Monitoring anaesthesia is the one where there's a bit of a grey area, but euthanasia is not in law an act of veterinary surgery, so it can be carried out by anyone. So that would be if you have chickens, you can pull their
That would be a
necks,
good example.
shooting an animal, and it's just what's best for that animal to make it the quickest and most humane, really.
It should still be carried out properly.
Yes.
Of course, but anyone could euthanize an animal.
Yeah. And on wildlife courses and things, you can be taught how to do that. And then obviously you've got your first aid, which owners can do subcut injections. So that's an injection under the skin. So if your cat was diabetic, or we have some that are on regular, say, steroid injections. Some injections we can teach an owner how to do, and they can do it at home. And then it does say that owners can do euthanasia, but I don't think many want to do that.
Probably many wouldn't want it on their own pet.
No.
There probably are some people with chickens or that sort of thing that maybe would euthanize by,
And I suppose it used to be the thing, if you had a dog, if you're farming and things.
I don't know. I don't think that happens that regularly.
No, I don't think it would.
I don't think there's that many farmers that shoot their own dog either.
I don't think.
It probably does happen, but I don't think it would happen very regularly at all.
No, so and then lay people obviously would be your groomers, and one of the things that does come up around that is that they've got a statement the RCVS have on anaesthesia-free dental procedures, which is a big thing that's we see more.
It sort of
now.
surfaced a couple of years ago, didn't it? People using scaling machines on conscious animals.
You'll see them on TikTok. You can buy them.
Yeah.
You can buy one to do at home.
It's not nice having your teeth scaled and polished. And even as a human, you understand what's going on. It's still so unpleasant.
Yeah.
Just the thought of doing that to a dog is just,
And the water involved is, so we anaesthetise them, they're intubated, and they have like a dental swab at the back of their throat to stop any water going into their airway. Whereas if you're scaling and you've got a panicked animal that's breathing in quickly, bits of tartar could go down into their airway. And like you said, it's just, especially when it's cold and you've got sensitive teeth, you can't get them to stay still. And if they're not under anaesthetic, you can't assess the teeth properly. And you even see it on these videos where they're showing what a good job they've done, and you can see that there's root exposure.
Yeah, you see the roots are exposed, and that'd be painful.
Yeah, and really, they're better off with the tartar than you removing that tartar and having an exposed root.
Potentially, because
that must be really sore. So definitely avoid anaesthesia-free scaling. At the groomers. So then...
This is such a dry podcast.
This is...
No one's going to listen to this.
So, this is probably more of a thing that's talked about within the veterinary circle, whereas owners probably aren't aware of it. And I would say there's no good way of owners knowing if a vet is more qualified or how qualified they are in a certain area. So this is when we call specialisms. But we're not allowed to say Elliot is a specialist, but he's got his exotic certificate, but he's not an exotic specialist.
No, I'm not a specialist.
Even though owners will quite often...
I'm not special in any way.
That's not true. But owners will quite often say, oh, he's a rabbit specialist, or they're a cat specialist.
I'm always correcting people that we can't claim to call ourselves a specialist because the RCVS considers that a protected title, essentially.
And what they've done now is there's an RCVS specialist and then there's an advanced practitioner, but you can't call yourself an advanced practitioner either, because there's a lot of paperwork that comes around that.
I could apply for, well, I probably couldn't at the moment. I'd have to do a little bit more to be able to apply for it, because I've got two. So I could call myself a certificate holder.
Yes.
So I've got a certificate in exotic animals and a certificate in surgery.
So we can say you've got extra experience in, is normally how I say it.
But you can say I've got a certificate.
Yes, and then I say that.
And what I'll describe is I've got a certificate. I can't call myself a specialist, but I've got plenty of experience treating X, Y, Z. And if it's outside my skill set, I'll let you know and we'll refer elsewhere. But it's such a minefield because it's not clear at all. And even for us looking at it, it's still not clear, really.
No. And I think RCVS are trying to do something to protect owners so that owners know
who they're seeing.
Yeah, who they're seeing. But still, most of our owners would never see, well, very rarely see a specialist unless we referred. And wouldn't probably see an advanced practitioner. It makes it very hard.
Advanced practitioner is more common.
But it's still a lot. If you're a general practitioner, which most people in small animal practice are, the time and the paperwork, that you would need to take to become recognised as an advanced practitioner is a lot. So you have to be qualified for more than 5 years, you have to have possession of an RCVS or other relevant postgrad qualification, so a master's, a level 7 or above, an RCVS certificate. So I believe yours is a certificate, but it's not an RCVS one yet.
So I've essentially done CPD certificates essentially. So I've got the GP cert, so I could top that up to a PG cert, which is a postgraduate certificate, and if I did that, I could then apply for advanced practitioner status with some more evidence.
Yes. So 250 hours of CPD over 5 years, also complying with the 35 hours, so that's I think 85 hours a year you'd need to do extra every year, and at least 125 hours of that must be in your designated field, so it would have to be exotic only. And then 10 hours per year with other practitioners in your focus, so you'd have to do 10 hours with other advanced practitioners in exotics.
Would it have to be advanced practitioners?
Well, it says practitioners, so I don't know.
No, I don't think that would have to be advanced practitioners.
This one's easy, 100 cases a year in the last 5 years. That's easy. A reference from another vet who's known you professionally for the last 5 years. If they haven't known you for the whole 5 years, you have to have separate ones for each of the 5 years. Because obviously if you're working with a vet here, quite often vets don't stay in one practice for about 5 years. Exactly. And then a statement detailing 2 examples where you've met the requirements of the Code of Professional Conduct. This could be one of them. Because we're highlighting the profession, so you're on your way.
Maybe I should do it. Well, the main reason I don't is I just think day to day, is it really going to change the service that I can offer my patients and clients? Not really. And does anyone understand what it is anyway?
Yeah, 36 pages of guidance notes you'd have to read, and then you have to reapply after 5 years.
Also, I'm like literally useless at doing things like coursework, so
So it is hard.
And the thing with getting the PG cert rather than the GP cert is that I'd have to do case reports, multiple case reports I think it is, and I'd have to do lots of reflective stuff, reflect on professional skills. So I don't know how I find time to fit everything in life anyway. And I did start doing the PG cert when I did my exotic certificate, but then COVID happened. And we lost a vet at the time, I think, and I just didn't.
They just moved on. They didn't die.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. So it just didn't happen.
And this is what I think. I think it stops a lot of general practitioners from doing it, and it does become, I don't know, more of a theory based and a.
But then I think it's. A case of that there does need to be.
But could you do with being a lower one that's if you've met certain qualifications and you're doing a certain amount of CPD?
Although I think I'm very happy being a GP vet. I'm very proud of the job that I do. I would be very comfortable sitting here saying that there's very good vets that will do things like hip replacements, that will do things like complicated spinal surgeries or whatever.
That's when you want your specialist.
But for sure. But they would not be able to do the breadth of stuff that I do. They would not be able to go from removing, a mass from a hamster or spaying a mouse to spaying a chicken.
Or then doing a talk about allergies or skin disease.
To then doing a complicated skin workup. Or to get a cystocentesis urine sample with syringe and needle from a bladder, or to do a talk to school kids or the 5-hour welfare needs. I quite like the breadth of stuff that I do.
That's it. With the specialist, everything is just heightened from that advanced practitioner. Everything, it becomes more, the title of being a specialty becomes more, I don't know what it would be called. It just becomes more special, really. So each one, it becomes smaller, so there's like goat health and production, pig medicine.
We should do that one.
So rather than being large animal, it just it comes under much smaller little groups, really. So yeah, and it's just a lot more that you need
but also
to do.
just even just reading. I'm just scrolling through some resources online now, and also we're looking at what you've printed on how to be.
You have to write papers. I think it's 10 to apply for it. And
Also,
if you're in a normal practice, you're not going to be doing research.
No,
so
I think my understanding is, and anyone veterinary listeners this can correct me, is that I think it's not possible to specialise in a normal practice.
Yes, I think it would be extremely difficult.
I don't think it's doable. I just don't think it is. I think you essentially have to go down the route of doing an internship and a residency.
And working within a hospital or university.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But then I suppose maybe that is what you need for, I don't know.
Maybe.
Because you're becoming so specialised.
Sorry, there's an annoying beep.
I don't know what that is.
I might go suss out the annoying beep.
Okay.
You carry on talking.
Oh no! I'm trying to find, I did have more on the specialists. Here we go. So they do say our CBS specialist status is not easily achieved. That is a bit of an understatement. And you can find what we should have said if you are looking if someone's a specialist or an advanced practitioner. There's a list of them on the RCBS website, so that's where you can find if someone is a specialist.
Anna was producing the annoying beep.
Oh, was she?
Broken the blood machine, so I probably broke it further by turning it off.
I'll tell you the one thing that isn't that bad with both these things, it only costs £105.
What? To be registered specialist?
Yeah, but you do have to do all the
to do
paperwork.
all that stuff?
Yeah, and just pay £105. I think you have to pay that every year though for
So you can't just offer them £1,000?
No, it won't take it, they will. So yeah, and then this is 250 hours of CPD plus the normal RCBS requirement, and then 125 hours in your field. You've got to be involved with your subject, which is fair. I think that goes without saying, really. But you do have to reflect on your CPD as well, not just write it down.
I think we're all meant to do that.
That is becoming more of a thing.
The thing for me is that you sort of, in your career, if you want to be a specialist, you sort of need to decide really early.
Yeah.
Essentially, graduate, internship, residency, specialist. Because otherwise, like someone in my situation with dependents, so 2 children and the animals and stuff like that, we don't yet have a mortgage, but if you've got a mortgage and things, to then go right back to doing
RVC had
residency.
One advertised, I think it was an exotic specialist this month, £27,000 a year.
What, for to do residency?
Yeah. And that compared to a vet's wage. But then I think also though...
So my wage at the moment is 50,000, which is underpaid because of how I structure the business, and I'm 10 years qualified. It'd be more reasonable for a 10 years qualified vet to probably have maybe 70, depending on the practice. Yeah,
especially when you're running the practice.
Oh yeah.
And arguably you're missing out on a lot of people who have got... But you quite often use your experience of everything else to then put into your exotics because you've got problem-solving skills, you've seen other things in other species, and I think you're missing that if you go straight from uni and then into a residency.
Yeah, I think it's a contentious thing. I would suggest that some of the best specialists that I know of did a reasonable amount of general practice.
Yes.
In their first few years before then going into their specialist subject. But yeah, it is very true. Like some of the surgeries that I will do on exotic patients, having got an exotic certificate and a surgery certificate is probably better than maybe what could be offered elsewhere.
And then you're drawing on all that other experience that you've used in other species to be able to do it. Or when things go wrong during surgery, or you get in there and it's not as you expect, you've got to change your plan.
But also it's the quantity that we do, so like we'll, for example, spay cats and dogs and rabbits and stuff all the time. And that's constantly practicing surgical skills so that then when I've then got a mouse or a hamster in front of me to spay, I know that my surgical skills are pretty hot because I'm doing like normal basic surgery all the time, practicing all the time. Whereas I think in a lot of specialist areas, it'd be relatively infrequent that you'd be doing just that high throughput of surgery but you're not even thinking about it, you're just doing it, and your body
Yeah, I
just knows
wonder if
what
like
to
the
do.
hip replacement surgeons now, they're just like, oh, just another hip
They probably
replacement
are.
today. Yeah, just
I
one
can't
and
remember
then
his
another one.
name.
Kevin.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's good.
shout out to Kevin. Kevin's
Yeah, I
lovely.
like Kevin.
Who did
He's at Langford.
Charles,
Right.
yeah, excellent. Yeah, I bet he does it.
Yeah.
He probably did it with like one arm behind his back, I suppose.
And we've seen that change, haven't we, over the years, whereas the
Mm.
hip replacement used to be a bit risky,
Mm.
but now they've sort of, because they've done so many, they've got more evidence, they know what works, it's...
Things still don't go to plan sometimes,
Yeah.
but I think the stuff that is offered is excellent. Yeah.
Or like IVET at Leinster, the IVET surgery, some of the stuff they do as well, it's just...
Yeah.
So there's a place definitely for specialists.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of admiration for what specialist vets do.
It's just hard for us to explain to owners the difference between...
But sometimes owners aren't necessarily aware
No.
what is out there
No,
as well.
what's
So
available.
I had a lovely little patient that we referred recently to a specialist neurologist, so nerves and stuff. I don't like neurology, I don't find it that interesting.
And there
I
has
can't
been a
like
shortage
everything.
in the UK as
There's
well.
a real shortage
so-
of neurologists, so lucky to get in there. But I don't think client was necessarily fully aware of what was out there.
No.
And so I was saying, well, things aren't going quite in the right direction at this stage, I'm going to recommend that we refer you, because you're going to end up needing something like MRI scanning or whatever, which is we don't have, and someone with a specialist interest in neurology.
Was that Langford as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, because she said she was lovely as well, the neurologist. So shout out to Langford.
Yeah, we send quite a lot down to Langford, don't we?
And this is the thing we get though when we're referred things, so a lot of these specialists will move around to different places as well, so you can be sending something for referral to one place for a while and then suddenly the staff have changed over, it's nice when the owners come back and tell us, we can keep track of
exactly.
what's going on.
Yeah. It's just a reflection of modern day working. People don't stay in the same job in quite the same way as...
Especially neurologists, they all get poached.
They get poached. I think they're constantly headhunting.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what happens. They're just headhunted from place to place, constantly creeping the wage up, and fair enough.
But then this might be part of the thing, because to become a neurologist is a long road, isn't it? And it is very, very specialised. So if you've got to try and decide that that's what you want to do when you're, in your 20s still.
Exactly. I don't think we really explained anything.
Hopefully we haven't
I think
bored
it's literally just made it all more muddy, more confusing. Essentially, I'm not a specialist. I'm not going to be a specialist. And admiration for people that do it.
Oh yeah, if they can. And
I also think it'd be a bit boring.
Yeah, so it depends what type of person.
Having said that, I did almost go down the route of exotic specialism. I think you may have told that story before.
I think you like the
It
teaching
almost
side
happened.
of it though.
I
Once
really
you
enjoy
become a
it.
specialist, you're then teaching the residents coming up. So I think that,
I would really enjoy it.
you enjoy the money. But you'd have to fill in all that paperwork to do it.
No, it wouldn't be worth it. Okay.
And vet nurses, it's still a bit behind really. So we've got certificates and things we can do, but there isn't anything like this where we can call ourselves something either.
I think really what we're moving towards the practice, we've discussed this before, is the idea of like a nurse practitioner.
Yes,
Like
I'd love if they actually had a nurse practitioner where we could do an exam or we could show experience.
I think it will happen. There is still a veterinary workforce shortage. So, although it seems to be less noise about that at the moment, but maybe not enough vets.
I think it's better. Well, I think a few of the vet schools there's new vet schools opened, and then there's vet schools that have taken on extra cohorts, isn't there? So that's
I suppose it'd be the first load of Arbor Keel vets we can write this year, for example. So,
Whereas in America, they've got a brand new role, so they're not a vet, they're not a technician or a nurse. They do, I think it's a 3-year course, and they're somewhere in between, and there's a lot of uproar about it. So that's how they decided to meet their shortage.
But then in America, as a vet, you're very well paid. And that's probably why there's
that's not
uproar.
what they're saying. It hasn't kept up.
It was a few years ago. Maybe I'm out of date with that.
And I think that is, and I think it's the stress and the workload and things. I think it hasn't changed the well-being side of things as it has here as much,
No,
I think.
yeah.
But yeah, see what happens there. Keeping an eye on that. I like having a nose.
Well done to anyone who's actually listened to all this. I think that's quite boring.
Especially if you're a specialist.
Yeah, there'll be people on just like, oh, you're giving out false information.
I think the only
Try.
side of it is interesting.
Yeah. We've got more exciting stuff coming up though. So
Yes.
we've got Emma coming on Wednesday.
I'm so looking forward to that.
Emma from
She's
NutriVet.
going to talk to us about polar bears.
Hopefully.
Treating polar
Well, we're going to
bears.
ask her about polar bears,
Yeah.
so hopefully she's prepared to talk about them. And then what else have we got lined up?
We've got one coming up on like bird flu, because obviously that's becoming a bit more prevalent
Yeah,
here in the UK.
yeah.
In America, it's quite rife, and there's even cats getting bird flu. So
Yeah,
we'll talk
that's
about
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
And nutrition and husbandry of birds, haven't we?
Yeah.
Got a lease coming in from Home Lacey
Yes.
College.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
To
Yeah.
speak to us from that side of things.
Yeah.
And we've got Laura talking to us about pigeons.
Yes. Have you pinned Laura down for a
Yeah,
date?
yeah, I've got a date from Laura.
Cool.
And then I'm just talking to Sam from Abbeydale, who's the vet nurse training college. So she's going to come in and talk to us about vet nurse training. So yeah, we've got plenty to talk
Hopefully the next one will be more exciting than this one.
It's an important one though, is why we do all what we do.
Yeah, it is. Cool, I think we'll pretty much wrap it up with that. Actually, if we've got any other news, I haven't really got
Well, I'm
anything
going to
else
make you look at
exciting.
Sarabi now, who's my foster cat.
Oh yeah, Sarabi's featured before, isn't she? Grotti Sarabi.
Yeah, she's not as grotty now, but she's not quite right.
It was maybe looking like euthanasia, so now she's probably staying with you.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't really want another cat, but she is lovely, and if we can get on top of it, and she's not infectious to my other cats, then
Yeah.
so we'll have to have a look at her today.
Yeah, make some
I think you'll be
decisions.
surprised how big she is now. So she was emaciated when I got her.
She was a saint.
Yeah, we had to clip all her hair off because she was so matted, and
Mm.
now she's 4.1 kilos. I think she was 2.3 kilos when she came. So yeah, she's a bit of a beast.
Don't think I have any other news. We scanned the goats recently, got baby goats due in March. Looks like Esther's having 3 or 4. Carol's probably having... No, Carol I need to rescan actually. Couldn't see any in her. It was a bit early.
Oh,
Buttons is having 2 or 3. Probably 2. I don't think I've got any other new animals. So
You
that's
haven't
good.
had any new
That's
animals
good
for a
thing,
while,
yeah,
actually.
no,
You've done
no,
well.
no jinxed us.
You could have Sarabi.
No. No, time isn't enough. Right, I think we'll wrap it up with that, shall we?
Yeah, that's
We need to start work. So thank you everyone for listening. I meant to look at how many listeners we had altogether, but was it over 270
So.
downloads, I think?
someone in Ukraine now.
Yeah,
as
some in
well.
Ukraine, a few from America, thanks to our American listeners,
Yeah.
and a couple in Australia too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you've got any questions or you could share anything about your
Yeah.
veterinary experience,
Actually, it'd be interesting to discuss through some other veterinary experiences.
in different countries.
Yes, that would be really cool. Yeah, I'll put the email in the show notes thing on Podbean. Cool. Right, thank you for listening, and thank you to Vets Best Hair for again sponsoring us.
Yeah.
So I've been Elliot,
I've been Becky.
and it's been Vet with Pets podcast. See you next time.